Support for the Pursuit of Music podcast is brought to you by Brooke Mays Music. Brooke Mays Music is a family of retail specialists who unify their professional skills and talents in order to focus on the needs of music education and educators. Their main goal is to increase the number of active instrumental music makers. Their objectives include, number 1, maintain strong working relationships for the lifespan of the music maker's career, and number 2, encourage the love and participation in music, and finally, number 3, being an active advocate for support of music in the schools. The voice of music education drives our actions. Thank you so much to our sponsors, Brooke Mays Music.
All right. Well, we are blessed today to have Mr. Ben Aune on our podcast. Mr. Aune is currently the director of bands at Hayes Middle School in Prosper.
Brand new
middle school. Welcome to the podcast. We're glad to have you here.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me.
So anyway, we'd love to get to know you a little bit, kind of get an idea of your background, and then just kind of go from there.
I think that's one of my favorite parts about interviewing people is that I get to find out information I've never known about them. Yeah. So I've heard John Alstrand's whole backstory, and it was like fascinating. Dr. Oliver's whole backstory was awesome. So can you just start out where you were born, and then your upbringing and how you kind of got into the band world?
Sure. Blood type. Social security number.
Yeah.
Right.
CBC.
I originally was born in Minnesota. My dad was a Navy pilot, so we didn't have a home for a while. We were constantly moving, trainings, deployments, and so it was coast to coast, California, Corpus Christi, Pensacola, Florida. Every about 18 to 20 months, we were moving to a new spot.
Wow,
that's crazy.
But my parents were very musical. They met in choir in college, so I was always surrounded by music and growing up listening to good music, or what I think is good music, and what my parents thought was good music, including great classical works and a lot of very strong choral tradition. My mom was a choir director and a choral singer. My grandfather was a band director in Minnesota for 33 years. So it was in the family, so I was kind of there.
So you just had to?
I had to.
Yeah.
My mom made me, I say that makes it sound so negative, but I started playing piano when I was 6, and my mom was my piano teacher, and of course I hated it, like most 6-year-old boys do. I'd rather, at that time, wanted to be playing outside, or just I wanted to be outside all the time. So I didn't like it, but it was my chore. You know, it was something that I did every day. You do your homework, you practice piano, and then you can do whatever it is that you want to do. We settled in the Hurst-Euless-Bedford area when my dad got on with American Airlines, started flying out of Dallas-Fort Worth, and that's where I started playing an instrument.
What year was that?
So that would have been 93.
My grandfather was working at American Airlines at the time.
Yeah.
At the brand, I think they had just made DFW International Airport.
Okay.
And was he flying out of DFW International or just?
He was.
Yeah. So my grandpa was responsible for after the plane would come back, they would go on and clean the plane.
Okay.
And he was making like $23 an hour back in the early 90s.
Yeah, that's good.
Kind of wild.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, that just reminded me
that's how we ended up. The airport is how we ended up here, and that's where I guess my instrumental career other than piano started. So I started I actually started at Hearst Junior High in the Hurst-Euless-Bedford district on trombone. I wanted to be a percussionist. The band director talked me out of percussion and talked me into trombone. We moved again in the 8th grade. I moved to Bedford.
Did they have a marching band at Hearst whenever you were there?
They wasn't that old. I'm not that old.
There was a marching band at Hearst Junior High?
My mother was in
I have seen
band.
those
Wow.
uniforms. They're like white coveralls.
It's crazy.
That's what they marched.
Yeah.
I'd never heard of that at a
Middle
junior
school,
high.
yeah. There's pictures of my mom with a big old H with her trombone. She played trombone too. So.
Wow.
Well, that's where I met Steve Madsen, and I had a lot of fundamental issues as a player, and when I got to Steve, and he more or less straightened me out, or dealt with the whole braces thing.
Yeah, it's a big thing.
But again, I came from a musical family, so I started figuring things out. At the beginning, I didn't have anybody to tell me that was wrong. Like, it was more like sound like this, and which I did. Meanwhile, I was playing with air in my embouchure. I had braces, so I was trying to alleviate pain and letting air get here. I wasn't articulating correctly, and then I got to Steve, and all of a sudden he's like, no, this is not going to work. You can't do this, and you refuse to let me do a couple things. It changed around my playing career quite a bit. I still had some fundamental issues into high school, where I went to LD Bell High School and learned from Joe Grzybowski, who was there, Michael Boone, Brian Youngblood.
TCU, man.
Then, the same group, and which I got my graduate degree there, and worked with Mr. Youngblood again. But Jeremy Earnhardt came along, and I got to take some private instruction from Nathaniel Nugent. And anyways, those folks helped straighten me out. I sort of feel in retrospect, I'm jumping around a little bit here, but that's my flaws as a player, I think, got me interested in teaching. In that all of the things that I had done wrong because nobody told me they were wrong, I thought, you know what, I could help people do this the right way. I almost think in a lot of ways, players that struggled a lot because of fundamental issues end up being phenomenal teachers because they had to work through. So I actually did a complete embouchure rebuild in college, where I went to Texas Lutheran University. I grew up in the Lutheran Church, and they gave me the most money to come play my instrument there. And
Where is that?
It's in Seguin. It's outside of San Antonio.
Okay, way down there.
It's about 30 miles east of San Antonio.
Yeah, there's an audition for the Seguin Symphony. Is it
It's Mid-Texas is what it used to be.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is now.
It was wild. They had an audition while I was at U of H there, and you hear a city like Seguin, and it turns out the second trombone player of the Austin Symphony was there for that audition. And I was thinking to myself, like, man, being a performance major is tough.
Yes.
If
the second trombone player of the Austin Symphony is there, it's like, man, all right, you can have that one.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go back to college.
I was there. I was able at Texas Lutheran. There's great players everywhere. Austin, San Antonio. The San Antonio Symphony at the time had a bunch of great players. My teacher, Chris Brannigan, was a great player who ended up playing in an Army gig. He left the school to go play an Army gig. So I left there. I taught for 10 years. I actually went to school I had a performance degree. I went to school as a biology major.
No way.
Wow.
I was going to be a park ranger, and
you would have made a great park ranger. I'm just saying.
Keith Dye was the director of bands at the time, and he sat me down. Keith Dye is now at Texas Tech. He sat me down and said, there are X amount of jobs open in Texas right now. If you were to declare your major as music education, we could help you out more financially. And that the rest was kind of history. So I graduated in 2003. I taught for 10 years, Carrollton, Farmers Branch, and Hearst Euless Bedford. And then I got an opportunity to do a graduate assistantship at TCU, which was a great experience. I left to do that. And then I've been in Prosper and Celina ever since. So I skipped around there. That's the nutshell version of it.
So whenever you left college, you left the Lutheran, what was the school you went to?
Texas Lutheran University.
Lutheran. And did you continue playing your instrument after that, or was it kind of like pack it away in the case?
Yeah, no, I had a lot of opportunities to play kind of on a church circuit still, and then Carrollton, I would sub sometimes in the Carrollton Wind Symphony, I think it's called. Played a couple times in that group, but not at the same level that I had been playing. And you would work summer camps and play in some faculty ensembles that were pretty good, which I did a couple times over the summer. But playing kind of took a back seat for a while, and you play for your students and whatnot, but nothing
like what it was,
Professionally.
like in at university. So
Correct.
how many decide to go get your master's at TCU?
It was about 10 years, and I was working with at Central Junior High with Christine Cumberledge, and it was a great experience. I felt like I needed the master's to make the next step, make the next leap for my career. And John Alstron, actually, who was assistant director of bands at LD Bell High School, kind of threw my name out there for this graduate assistantship that was coming open.
Man, it was during that time. So that was what, 2010?
That would have been 10-ish. Yeah. 2012 maybe as latest.
That sounds right. Because I
12.
got to HEB in 2010 and you were there.
Were you a director at Central Junior High?
Yes.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I remember. You were always so you were one of the off in the distance cool guys, but you were also at Central, so you were like one of the enemies.
I know. Well, so Central was the split feeder in HEB. So there were 2 junior high campuses that fed Trinity High School and 2 that fed LD Bell, and we were kind of we were like, hey, I don't want to teach those kids. I'll teach my kids. So we I'm exaggerating, of course, but there is an element to that, and it's somewhat happening at Hayes to some degree now, where our students will go to the new high school. So, and this is not, an indictment on anybody, but we don't have a high school staff currently that can send teaching units down, knowing that those kids are not going to go to Prosper High School. They're going to go to the new Rock Hill High School. So.
Yeah, and those kids are going to face a challenge in and of itself, because the high school that's currently standing, all those kids there already have their bias towards that high school.
Correct.
And that's where they want to be.
Yep.
So I know just personally in the trombone studio at PHS, there's a small number of kids who want to go to Rock Hill, and then there's a huge number of kids that just want to stay at PHS. Yeah. And what the problem that I'm seeing is that as less and less kids go to Rock Hill, more and more kids are choosing to stay at PHS because they don't want to, you know what I'm saying? They don't want to get separated.
Yeah, so. And I think, too, this is in any growing community as Prosper is, the hardest split is that first high school. I feel like it gets a little bit easier as you go, but that's going to be a tough one for those kids, for sure. I mean,
I have some anxiety about it.
As a teacher. Same here.
Yeah.
Well, and just when you teach in Prosper, change is going to happen. There are a lot of things that you don't know, but it's going to change. And so it's a little bit exciting, but not currently knowing who the Rock Hill staff is and not currently knowing how that's going to fit into place. Of course it makes you anxious because as a program director, I'm looking forward to working with whoever ends up in that position. But of course it brings anxiety for sure. And I feel for those kids. And so I talked to some of those kids in Prosper at Hayes. Some of them have opened 5 schools since they started kindergarten.
Yeah.
5 brand new schools.
Oh my gosh, dude.
So
that's crazy. It's wild population.
You think about all you ever know is brand new school.
Yeah.
And getting pulled this direction, and now you're going to open up this school, and now you're going to open up this school. And so I feel for them. And you get a lot of students that are excited about the new school and excited to start the new tradition. But, of course, you have some that watch their older siblings go through Prosper High School, and that's what they know, and now it's going to be different. So that's got to be hard, especially for a teenager, I think.
So can you talk to us about what it's been like to start up a brand new middle school in Prosper? Because I know Rogers opened up in 2016, but now that we've got the 3-way split, like now that it's not a direct rivalry, Rogers Reynolds, now that we have a third, I feel like that had to be pretty interesting, especially given the quality of the campus. I mean, you walk around there.
For sure.
It is nice. It is a very, very nice campus.
Yeah, I feel like you kind of opened up the wild, wild west.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, because there's not an identity on that side of town. So I would say that was the trickiest part. I tried not to overthink it, but you're definitely creating a new, we call it the blue side of town.
Right.
We are the first pillar of the blue side of town. So we are responsible ultimately for creating the identity. It was quite an experience. I've never opened a new school. It was quite an experience over the summer doing inventory for instruments I was not ordering, but making sure that they showed up on campus, meanwhile fulfilling another contract. So there was a lot of double time in the months of April and May, trying to figure out, driving to Hayes every day and checking the weight room to see what instruments had showed up, getting them secured safely on a campus that was still open. You know, the exterior doors were all open because so many contractors were coming and subcontractors were coming in and out.
So you were actually able to get onto campus.
I was.
I thought they were banning people.
No, so I was given the okay by John Alstron and my principal, Mr. Jones, at about the beginning of April to start making visits over there. And a lot of that was just making sure that these shipments were secure because you didn't know who was in the building. It was open.
Yeah.
As long as the exterior construction gate was open, the building was open. So anybody
That's
could
scary.
come in. It is scary. And when you're talking about as many instruments as we were
That's
having.
a lot of money.
So we were there every day, myself and Mr. Fawahimi and Ms. Kajaka, my staff, fellow staff members at Hayes. We were kind of splitting up responsibility, making sure that one of us could be there to lock that up. So that was a new experience for me. But the thing, as a program director, you know, the thing you worry about is these kids all have been doing the same Prosper thing for X amount of time. Luckily, I had been here before. This was not my first swim through Prosper. I'd come originally with John Alstron when he first came out here. And so I kind of had a feel for the area. But at the same time, like you said, it's new.
Yeah.
So there was no identity. So we kind of got to do it how we it was great. It's like creating you got a blank canvas. The one thing we did know is the Prosper kids are amazing kids. You know, they're unlike any other place I've ever been to. I mean, all kids are amazing. It's just amazing to have such a large amount of students that are just spectacular, dedicated families that are dedicated to it. So really, it was just a matter of doing what we do and making sure that the kids believed in what we do and making sure that we built relationships with those kids, and so they understood we were here to stay and we're here to kind of lead, you know, this lead this side of town and create something new, but still retain Prosper and still retain what makes Prosper great. And so I feel like I was in a unique position in that I had been to Prosper before, and I was able to do that. I feel like I was able to do that in terms of bringing what I knew of Prosper, but at the same time bringing me and knowing that I'm brought here to do my thing, and so that's what I started doing. And again, the kids are spectacular. The parents are amazing. It's been a blast.
Yeah, what I love about Prosper is that the so long as you're compelling, I think so long as you're compelling, the kids will buy in to with they won't have a ton of pushback on you and any of your ideas, any of your suggestions. I mean, I think that was one of the coolest things about walking in, and I was lucky because I got to see the program 3 years deep, like the start of the third years when I walked in. So I'd already seen, like, when I walked in the band hall for the first time, I could already see them starting to button into you and John's vision for the program.
Yeah.
And it's just like, man, it's great because I think I kind of started to take it for granted because, you know, there were programs that I taught at in Houston where it seemed like the kids and the directors were butting heads all the time, either via attitude or because they thought this guy just, you know, didn't know what he was talking about. And there was always like this infighting. But at Prosper, it's like if you can put forth a valid vision that they see fit, they'll go, I believe in what this guy's saying.
And there's always, I mean, we would do the same thing. There was intrepidation. You know, the kids are giving me funny looks. And just like when we first came to Prosper, the same thing happened. You know, it was different.
Right.
that first year, but now, a lot of the language is the same, the systems are the same. We're doing the same thing that they were doing at other middle schools. And once we started doing that, they're looking at me nodding and going, okay, I know that this guy's different, but I know this system and I know these words and I know these expectations. And so that clicked pretty quick for us. And we're having a good time. In any situation, even next year, there's a get to know you period with your students. And if we really put our money where our mouth is as teachers, what I'm doing is I'm getting to know my students on an individual basis. Mm-hmm. And that takes time. It's not going to happen. We just finished the first 9 weeks, and I still feel like I'm getting to know my students. And as teachers, we have a responsibility to be relationship builders, and that's what we're trying to do. That's what we as a staff at Hayes are trying to do now. It's all new kids. We're all new staff. We are in that still get to know you stage, and I love that. I love that's why I teach. I love getting to know young people. So
yeah. Well, I would like to ask questions. If you're good to go, I'd like to ask questions. I think one of the coolest things about my journey to Prosper was getting to watch you teach a beginner class for the first time. Have you ever watched him teach a beginner brass class?
Yeah, back in HEB, definitely. I think here too.
So when I walked, it was at Rogers the first year, because I think you had just become a middle school director.
I was I had asked John to go full-time middle school. Yeah, because the high school schedule was kicking my butt a little bit in my personal life.
Right, yeah.
With my family. So.
That kind of came back around.
Yeah. And I did something silly, like take a head high school position the next year.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That was,
yeah. That was funny watching. So I would go up to Celina Middle School, and, he'd come in, and it looks like he'd gotten about an hour of sleep last night.
Yes.
He's just wide-eyed. It was funny. But so one of the coolest things about getting to go to Prosper for me was watching how methodical you are with your teaching, and I think it's extremely unique. And we were talking about buy-in. The kids really buy into it, which is kind of reverse thinking for me as a younger person. I would think it would be a snooze fest for them. But I think you're a master at getting kids to just focus. So can you just talk about your pedagogy? Where did it come from, and how do you, when you're setting up a beginner class, how do you try to implement your pedagogy into that class?
Yeah, I love talking about this stuff. This is stuff that I nerd out on. We can start even without music first, just talk about the human element of what we're doing. You're accepting, take our beginning trombone class. You're accepting 20 sixth graders, all with varying backgrounds, different personalities. Some of them want to be heard every day. Some of them don't even want to be noticed. Some of them don't want to be there. You're literally accepting all of these kids together in one group. So the first thing I try to do is I try to create a team. Like, we are all on the same team. And you talk, now I'll talk. What did you think about what I said? What did you think about what he said? And there's not a lot of music, but it is a lot of team building and relationship building, because ultimately it's a performing art and we have to play for each other. Right. And what the kids don't know is that I'm getting them to understand that one day you're speaking in front of the group, but next you're going to play in front of the group. And of course you always have eager kids, but you got to hear everybody. And so you figure out those kids pretty quick. I think back to what you said too, the part about it that I love so much is just teaching the kids to communicate effectively. And that's every year I feel like it gets a little bit more difficult. And then we could go on and on about the reasons why it's a little bit more difficult. But I absolutely love getting kids to it's a spiritual thing almost, like. And really, that's where it came from for me in my spiritual journey, is reading 1 Corinthians. And if I don't have love, and this is great for musicians, I'm just a sounding gong. No, I'm just noise. I'm white noise.
Right.
And so I took that into my heart, and I started looking at kids. I'm like, every word that comes out of my mouth is going to be, it's going to come from my heart, and it's going to come from a place of love. And yes, we're going to be 30 years in age difference. But if you speak to kids like you mean it, and you speak like you love them, they're going to listen to you. So, and it's hard for sixth graders to talk in front of other sixth graders. But
Right.
if you show them that you care about what they have to say, and you show them that what they're saying has value and meaning, all of a sudden you see kids start sitting up taller. And when you validate what they have to say, whether it's right or wrong, and you acknowledge them and you thank them for speaking, and then you go on to the next kid, then when you ask them to look at your eyes next time, they're a little more interested in staring at your face. You know what? This guy listens to me. So, and that's all I ask. I say, when you talk, I'll look at you. When I talk, you look at me. Ready, set, go. And then we just go, right? You just start talking. So a lot of relationship building. And then to the music and the procedural side of it, I'm a firm believer that students will do anything you teach them to do. And that's a Steve Madsen thing and Christy Cumberledge. If you teach them to walk in a room a certain way, they'll do it every time. I mean, of course, you have to redirect sometimes. If you communicate in a certain way as part of your classroom procedure, you have to communicate the same way every day, but they'll eventually start doing it like you do it. Mm-hmm. So huge believer in, I'm going to teach you everything from how to walk into the room to how to pack up at the end of the class period, how to practice at home. I'm going to pretend like you don't know anything, which a lot of them don't. Some of them do. But when you take that approach, it's like a video game. Here's level 0. Good. Now here's level 1. Good. Now tomorrow we're going to start at level 0 again, but we're going to get to level 4. And then we're going to start at level 0 again, but now we're going to get to level 8. It can be hard, especially when you've been doing it for long enough. You find yourself wanting to go faster.
Right.
Let's get to level 4 faster today. But there are days that that's just not going to happen, and you have to go back to level 0 and say, remember, we used to do this level 0. We used to sit like this, and when I used to talk, you used to look at me and kind of redirect and re-engage. Or you used to walk in with this demeanor. You used to walk in and sit down and work on daily drill every day. And now you seem distracted. So let's get back to these basics. And so what you're teaching them procedures, and then you're holding them accountable every day for everything that you've ever covered, even the most mundane.
It sounds like what John was talking about whenever we had him on, and he said we were talking about the "What Did I Just Say?"
Correct
game, and he said, he made this great reference. He goes, "Here's the pencil, don't drop it."
Absolutely,
that's exactly what it sounds like you're doing. So, I've got some firsthand experience now that I'm working with your beginner euphonium and tuba class. As teachers, what should we do if we have a child or two out of 20 who are obviously trying to, for whatever reason, seek attention on a pretty regular basis? Do you have a system in place to kind of bring them back into the group?
Yes, I give them attention if they crave it. I don't know who said this, but this is always in my mind. Those students that crave attention, they don't care what kind of attention. It can be negative or positive. It can be you're getting in trouble, and they crave that. It can be positive attention. It doesn't matter. They crave attention. It's up to the teachers to decide what kind of, which direction that's going to go. So students that crave that attention, I give it to them. Go. You can talk. You can talk again. Go. But now you got to let somebody else talk. Okay, now let's all play. Now, student A, what do you have to say about that? Okay, good. Now let's all, and a lot of it is just acknowledging their existence, acknowledge that they have words to speak. And a lot of them, you know what they do? They get enough words out and they're like, okay, I'm going to start listening a little bit now. It's almost like they get to a point where it's not fun anymore because I'm listening to them every time, and they're used to being like, no, don't do that.
Right.
And that's maybe what they want, whereas I celebrate it, even if I try to celebrate it. Now, of course, you got to do it within the confines of the procedures for the class. And that class you're speaking of is particularly, there's a lot of personalities in that class where they want attention. So it's a little bit of a juggling act as a teacher. But to answer your question bluntly, I give them the attention that they want. I just make sure it's positive and within the framework of the procedures. Now, if it's causing class to slow down or being held up, then, there's level 2 and there's level 3. But for the most part, if you give them enough attention, they start to calm down and they start to communicate.
That's probably polar opposite of what kids are used to in every other classroom setting. So there's a couple things that I've heard you talk about. One, the attention, and then 2, setting the foundation for communication, which is, for most of my experience outside of band, it was very much that when I walked into history class, it was basically, for lack of a better term, it was sit down and shut up and listen. Your voice doesn't belong here.
Right.
Whereas in your classroom, it's very interesting to me because there's not like when I was working with you at Rogers, and granted, that was a very talented trombone class, but the level of focus that you were able to achieve with 6th graders was, I've never seen it before in my life.
Yeah, a lot of that too is just me. I remember as a young teacher, I was frantic. It was this frantic nature, and all I was trying to do is get kids from point A to point B by sheer willpower. And I just realized at some point in my career, a lot of it was watching John Alstron teach, but I realized at some point in my career, I can't do it like that forever. Like, I'm going to burn myself out. I'm going to give myself a heart attack. I've got to figure out a different way to do it. So I started realizing that the kids mimic how you are on the podium. So if you're frantic, they're going to be frantic. If you're grumpy, they're going to be grumpy. If you're short, they're going to be short. If you yell and scream, they're going to yell and scream. They do what you do.
Right.
And it's a very strange, it's almost like a sixth sense that those kids have when you're up there and they can read you so quickly. And so I said to myself, how do I want my kids to be? I want them to be calm and follow procedures. So guess what? I need to be calm and follow procedures. And all I started doing is modulating my voice. So I would speak here, and then I would start speaking like this and say, this is really, really important. Can you listen to my voice right now? And then somebody would do something good. I'd be like, what? That's awesome. And I'd raise my voice up like this, and then kids are like, and then I'd bring it down, and then they're like, it's just a modulating of my voice where you start to read the class, just like any movie. They watch movies, they watch TV shows all the time. I'm giving them the down moment, and then, oh, here we go. This is the exciting moment. And, so I think the other thing back to the beginners, they do that because they also feel like they're moving. They also feel like they're traveling. They feel like they are doing something. It may be the same thing, but they're talking about it. They're getting better at it. And so you've seen it. We all do it where it's you play, we all play. You play, we all play. And they start to get the hang of it. And then all of a sudden you have a class where it's constant motion. We all play. Now you play. While everybody's playing, I'm going to come over and I'm going to give you one piece of feedback. Now we all play. Now you play. Now everybody's playing. I'm going to give you one piece of feedback to work on. And it's just perpetual motion, and it keeps them engaged. And then if you have something really important to address the group, you stop and you say, oh my goodness, class, this is so exciting, but this just happened. And then like what you're doing is you're going, they're all like, oh, and then it's like zoom in here, and it's either a positive reinforcement or, what I'm noticing we need to make this an objective. And again, this is John Alston. Your objective is A. Can you please tell me what your objective is? And that's the whole, here's some knowledge. Take it. Do you have it? Right? Like, did you grab the knowledge that I just gave you? Oh yeah, it sounds like you did. Good. Okay, now apply it. We all play. Now you show me. Now we all play. And it's the concept of getting one day better. That's all you're trying to do. You know, when I was younger, I wanted to get 20 days better in one day. Well, that's, again, it'll burn you out, and you create a frantic environment where the kids aren't soaking up and absorbing what you're trying to tell them. Right. And I also, too, feel like it's contemplative time for them. You know, if you can get a kid to sit and listen in silence, when do they ever do that?
Like,
you know what
never.
I mean? They never do that. And so all of a sudden they find themselves sitting and really thinking about what they're doing. And you ask them questions to engage, like, what are you going to think about before you play? And the first 9 weeks, it's like, I don't know. You know, or it's like, I don't know. It's like, well, let me give you something to think about. Think about this. And then you play, and then you ask another kid, what are you thinking about? Well, the kids that want to please you start just regurgitating what you've been saying.
Right.
But that's all you're doing. You're leaving a trail of breadcrumbs, you know, and then they start thinking like you, and they start caring about the things you care about. Like, what do you sound like? You know, I want you to think about making your best sound. You know who makes the best sound? A. You know, and then you ask the kids, who do you think makes the best sound? And, you know, you're including them, and you're like I said, leaving this trail that they can follow to where they start thinking the way you start thinking.
Right.
You know the root of the word school means, or school is?
I know.
It's Greek. It's the word skole, which translates to leisure, and it's the idea of leisurely sitting back and thinking about the great. Well, back in the Greek days, it was the great truths of the world. But you know, I think we do lose that. You know, this idea of school being just this place to just kind of sit back and think, and relax.
Right.
Now
it's so frantic all the time.
I feel like the students we get, for the most part, they get, again, it's not an indictment on anybody, but I feel like they come in and they're used to just being talked to. Like, you sit down, you get talked to. Talk. Tune out. Next class. Talk. Tune out. And then all of a sudden you go to a class where the teacher's like, what do you think? And you're like, I don't even know what you just said.
Right.
And then so you say, well, what did I just say? Mm-hmm. And then the first time, you know, you cut them slack, and you say, we'll come back to you another time. What do you think? And it is a gradual process of, let's just sit and think. And I think you guys as teachers know too, you know, when you get students to think about we had a perfect example in our ensemble rehearsal the other day, where I thought the kids were exhaling forcefully, but inhaling calmly. So they would force air out and then calm inhale, but the sound was never quite right at the beginning.
Right.
And so, you know, we do okay, let's look at me. Let's talk about this real quick. Can you try one thing? This is going to be your objective. Can you try to make your exhale as calm as your inhale? What does that mean to you? And then you ask a kid, what is the objective? What are you trying to accomplish? And then all of a sudden we're having a conversation about it. And I'm like, now put your horns up. And is the actual feedback that we gave them what made the sound? The first sound we made was monumentally different. Well, was the sound different because of the feedback that I gave them? Or did we as teachers just challenge them enough to where they started thinking more in depth about what they're doing? Right. You know what I mean? Are they actually, did just this, the idea of this, all of a sudden make them better players? or did they just start caring more about what they're trying to do? And so when you think about, back to your comment, in leisure, calm, discuss, let's have a conversation, and now let's do it again. Well, it's not necessarily the content. The content's important, but really, you know, we're creating an environment where the kids are thinking and actively engaged about what they're trying to do. And a lot of this, again, comes from what John talks about, and I'm going to say this, what did I just say? And you're challenging them to engage 100%. And the first time, I mean, it's like clockwork. The first time you do it with a new group, you get about 30% of the kids that can regurgitate what you just said. But then it's fun, because then it goes up. Then you get about 90%. Then you're up to about 95%. And then now you say, what did I just say? But you can't say it like I did. You have to say it different.
Right. That'd be like level 2. Yeah.
But then they say it, and then you look at another student and you say, what did he just say? But you can't say it like him. And so you're just constantly digging that hole and, again, getting them to think. Does it take time? Yeah. But in my experience and working with the master teachers that I have, it ends up moving faster in the long run.
Right.
Because you're building a culture where the kids are just, they sit down and their wheels are automatically, he may call on me and ask me about the full ensemble. I may be playing tuba, but he may ask me about the flutes. I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
You know?
Steve Madsen told me that story about how he got kicked out of rehearsal once because he was asked about a trumpet line or something of that nature, and he got kicked out of rehearsal, which, you know, we do a lot of reading. I'm sure all of us do. And a lot of the stuff that I've been reading recently is about just cognitive science and the way that the brain works. And the moment when you are allowing the child's brain to open up and just sort of expand and have its own rational thoughts being processed, juxtaposed to your statements, that's when the most creative part of the brain is like on fire. And that's where the brain, like the best type of brain development, the one that like CEOs are looking for and all management teams are looking for, like that creativity aspect, not just robots who will repeat what you just said.
Absolutely.
Regurgitate the information, but actually take it in and analyze it inside of their own head. That's it. Like you were saying, it's a multi-year process, but you're starting the journey. Whereas I don't know that there are any other activities that do the same thing.
If you're talking about having a high-level conversation with anybody, an adult, child, you have to be able to communicate first. Right. You know what I mean? So in a way, with these young sixth graders, these young people, first, let's learn how to communicate. So, you know, perfect example today. Student isn't participating properly, so you say, do you need to set your instrument down and do you just need some time to think? And his response was, well, I wasn't doing anything wrong. And so what just happened there? Well, that's not what I asked you, right? He's immediately jumping to conclusions that A, he's in trouble, B, who knows where his mind is going. I mean, I can make assumptions, but I don't know. And so you have to stop and say, so you stop the class and you say, look at me. That's not what I asked you. What I asked you was, do you need time to do this? And the answer doesn't matter. What am I trying to get the kid to do? I'm trying to get him to communicate with me. I said this. Now you respond to what I said. And then I'll respond to what you said, right? And we'll go back and forth. But what you can't do is you can't assume, you can't respond to my question with what you think I mean by my question.
And it sounded like it was pretty aggressive in the response too.
Yeah, and it's not. I mean, you're just being honest and upfront with the kids, and that's not what I said. Here's the question I asked. And then the first thing young kids want to do is they want to start talking before you finish talking.
Right.
So you say, just hold on a second. So once you can teach them to communicate effectively, then you can start having conversations where you're, you know, like, think about when we learn to talk. we're terrible at speaking. Like, we can't say words right. We don't use grammar and syntax correctly. And then we practice talking. And we get so much time to practice talking. Well, these kids have had plenty of time to practice talking. Now let's practice talking the right way, and let's practice communicating the right way in a super effective way. That's really calm and relaxed, and let's exchange information as casually as we can, and then let's get better at our instrument. So it's a long process. These students know how to talk. We're not teaching them how to talk. We're teaching them how to communicate. I say, now you say back. Now I say. Don't talk while I talk, because that's not very effective communication. Look at my eyes, because if you look away, that's not very effective communication. And you model it every day, and then they start doing it. It takes time. And at any given time, you could probably walk into my class and see that not happening. But just know that that's the end goal. And then by the end of the year, you get 6th grade classes where the kids sit there and they just eat up everything that's coming out of your mouth, and then a student wants to play and they want feedback from the class. It's really an exciting thing when
I
it
think
starts.
you should be getting thank you letters from parents
Right.
for teaching their kids. I don't know that you could learn how to communicate effectively on Xbox Live.
How many adults have you come across where
Yeah.
that's not ever been? I mean, you feel like you're speaking 2 different languages.
Do you use the same tactics against those adults?
Absolutely.
I can imagine.
Absolutely. I mean, especially in a professional setting, in a formal setting. I mean, and I'm guilty of doing it too. I'm sometimes, especially in a social setting, you talk just to talk.
Yeah.
In a professional setting, I never like to do that. If I don't have anything to say, I'm not going to say. If I don't have something to say to a student, I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to force it. Everything that comes out is going to be true. And it's going to come from a place of love, and that's it. But yeah, I do feel like part of my job is to teach them how to communicate, and that's just it's just something I believe. I don't care if they go on to become professional players, but I would like them to be able to effectively communicate with one another, whether it be adults or other students, in a formal professional setting.
Well, it's extremely effective and exciting to watch, just because, like I said, I had never seen it before. I still don't really see it, especially at the middle school level, where you have a director that comes in here and kind of goes commando and goes, I'm running this class. I'm the leader and the charge. You're going to listen to me, and you're not going to. But you're very interactive with the way that you communicate with students, and I can tell that not only do you have their attention, but they understand that they can communicate with you in an effective way, especially by the end of the year. It's really
Yes.
cool. So that was the main thing that I wanted to talk about in the podcast, just because I know it's great information. Last question we always ask people is if you have any advice. So Allison Crow teaches with you, and so she's going to be a music major. Drew Jones is another one who's going to be a music major. We like to get advice for anybody who, even if they're, some of our 7th and 8th graders who are thinking about becoming band directors or private lessons teachers, any advice that you have going into the university level, going out of high school level, going into university level, do you have any advice for them for their undergrad?
Yeah, and they're going to be teachers?
Yeah, that's the plan. Right?
Yes. I would say spend as much time around children as you can, young people.
Right.
Get to know them, get to know how to talk to them, get to know how they act, how they behave, get to know their what they're good at, what they're not good at, and just start to be around large groups of young people. I think it took me so long to really get comfortable in front of large groups of young people to where I wasn't myself. I was a little robotic. It was a little forced. And if I had spent more time in front of groups of people and taking advantage of opportunities that I really, frankly, didn't really seek out, I would encourage them to be around young people in large groups and watch master teachers in front of young people in large groups.
Yeah.
Really just watch. I mean, in some ways you can learn more from not a master teacher, because you can watch somebody who's struggling in front of a group and go, you know what, I do that. I probably shouldn't do that anymore. So just watching large groups. I would encourage them to, this is a step further and a step further in their career. They've got to know how to love kids. They more important than having a knowledge of music. They have to find a way to find young people interesting and want to, and when I say love kids, just affirm and be around and build up young people.
Which you can't really do in your undergrad Theory 2 class.
Absolutely not. No, absolutely not. So I think that getting out there with the kids, but even just private teaching,
Right.
and getting to know kids on that level doesn't even have to be groups of people. So I definitely tell young teachers when they come out of college, so I'm skipping a step again, but if you don't, more than anything, odds are that first job you have, you're going to come from a high-level university ensemble. You're going to step in the classroom with a non-varsity middle school band, and you're going to listen to it and you're going to want to cry because they're young, inexperienced players.
Right.
And you're not going to know what to do. Whereas if you approach it from, let's do this first. Let's get to know each other. Let me get to know you. And then let's start fixing it one step at a time. So I think just learning how to be around students and talk to students as candidly as you possibly can, it'll carry them a long way in education.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, I mean, that's the goal, is we're here to develop these kids. And whether or not they become musicians doesn't really matter. I want
Correct.
for anybody that took from me as a teacher to have a little bit of, chest out mentality, like I can do this sort of mentality about anything, because they've learned how to conquer literally from step one all the way through, you name it, all state, area level, region. Even if they didn't make region, they persevered, because it's very frustrating to learn an instrument at first.
Fortitude, man.
Yeah, that's a great word for it, fortitude.
Yep. I do. I believe in our activity because I of course played sports growing up too. I think all the same things you get from sports you get from band if you do it right.
Yep.
And that includes how to communicate effectively with teammates and how to work as a team and how to work as a unit. So I deeply believe in what we do, especially what we're doing in Prosper with the people that we have.
Yeah, we're lucky that we have access to so many people up here.
Yeah.
We don't have to look too far to find people who are super, just, like you were saying, the masters of their craft.
Yes.
And it kind of feels like whenever we were going to Bell and we were working in that system too, there's just masters everywhere down there too. Steve Madsen's last year was my freshman year, which was his last year was my last year at middle school, which is just crazy for me to think about. Yeah. Well, we really, really appreciate you being on. I really wish we could go for about another hour.
Me too.
Yeah.
No, it's fun.
It's good. I'm quite full right now. I've been taking a lot of mental notes, so it's good. It's when you've been teaching a while, sometimes it's the stuff that I know that I knew, but I forgot that I knew, and I'm glad you said it.
Right. Yeah.
I feel like I could sit down with you guys and do this for another couple hours. Not even on. I enjoy talking to you guys about this. It's fun.
Well, we appreciate it, and I'm sure we'll have you on again. We'll
Cool.
do like a part 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyways, we do the peace sign. So peace.
Is that what we do?
Well, you started it.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.